Hey everyone, it's Michelle with Silver Snake Designs, and here today I'm going to talk about barefoot sandals. I'm not going to do a tutorial on how to make one at this moment in time, but I am going to give you some technical advice on how to measure a foot and little odds and ends that I've learned over the years while doing barefoot sandals for my customers. So basically, what I just wanted to say is I basically just started with one prototype that I used, and this is my design, and I have it on a ceramic display foot, which you can buy on Amazon for roughly $10–12. So they're pretty, they're pretty cheap. They're not bad priced, but it's really good too if you want to buy quite a few of them for display and displaying your barefoot sandals. So basically, in order to make the barefoot sandal, you first have to measure your customer's foot. So in this display here, you can see how it actually falls. So you want to make sure that you're measuring your customer's foot properly. So what I have here is some twine, some hemp cord. So I'm going to just cut. And then, you know what, I'm going to move it around like this. It's just easier for me to hold and work with because I'm right-handed. So what you want to do is you want to take your cord. You kind of want to, let's try another longer piece because that was not long enough. And I don't know how to video edit, so make sure, use that as a learning experience. Make sure your cord is long enough. There you go. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring your cord around, or your string, and you're going to put it loose, okay? Right around here. And then you're going to mark it with a little marker. So we figure right about there. And now that we have that little mark, we're going to put it here. And we're going to measure down here. And then we're going to do a little mark here. There we go. So now, so make sure you have scissors, maybe some hemp cording, and just like a little marker to help you. So now we're going to cut that off. Then we're going to come up here. We're going to cut at our second mark. Okay. So now we basically have this and this. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes why I like the string more than I like a tape measure. I just don't want to take my barefoot sandal off because it's a pain in the butt to get it back on the display. So in the meantime, what you could do is you could see this. So if you're at a craft fair and you have a customer, let's say you display your barefoot sandals at the craft fair and a customer likes it, what you can do is basically bring a folding chair and like a little footstool to your craft show, because that way when you take the measurements, the customer will be sitting down in a nice chair with their foot up on a little footstool. And then what you can do is you can take the measurements, put it into a plastic bag, and write the customer's name on it. So that way when you go home later, you have the customer's measurements right there for you. So that's a good reason of why I like having the string. The downside to having a tape measure is because if you write 16 inches, circumference, and 8 inches in length, or excuse me, 4 inches in length, then it gets to be like, well, I would still have something to cut out, and I'll show you why in just a few moments. So the reason why you want to take good measurements is because you don't want it to do this. And I kind of made my barefoot sandal prototypes based on prior customers. So what I have in this prototype for a display only, this barefoot sandal, is what I call average measurements, and I will go into a little bit more detail about that later. But I did average measurements of what I've made for average people, sized people's feet, and I just put it on this display. But one thing I like about doing that, and I can show you some negative sides to this, is because you don't want your barefoot sandal flapping around or have it feel like it's going to come out of the person's toe. You kind of want barefoot sandals that are going to be snug here against the person's toe, that it's not going to feel like it's slipping off. And you don't want this to be flapping around, see, when the person's walking. So what you kind of want to do is, if I was making this prototype to fit this foot, let's say this size foot, I would have actually reduced the number of beads in this section so it would have come up a little bit tighter, okay? And I think I did pretty well with this. I think if this was just a little bit tighter, this wouldn't move around as much. It would stay firm. So this is kind of like, you don't want things too loose. And if you have it too loose up here, it's just gonna, you know, fall to the side. So you kind of want to avoid that too when you're doing the measurements. And I think we can take this off now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this barefoot sandal flat, and I'm just going to show you different average measurements that I use. So that's just basically a rough idea. And why you should really measure well. And another reason is, I'll just show you in a second here. So when we take this off, you'll be able to see the whole thing. Let me see, make sure that you can see this in the video. There we go. There. So, and the thing is, if you were having, like I had said before, if you just had like just a simple beaded string like this as your barefoot sandal and not any of this intricacies right here, then if you have the string can help you gauge just how much you're going to have for when you create the barefoot sandal. So for example, you can scrunch up this. So in order to account for this V shape into the circumference of your customer's foot, this will help you see if you're going over or if you don't have enough beads on. So you could see, oops. So you could see that you can move the string and I have just enough, and that adding this is not going to take away or add an extra inch that I don't need to the sandal. So it kind of acts as a guide. You can move it, and that's why I like that. This also, you could see, you know, based on the barefoot sandal, you know, you could see, measure that and make sure you're within the correct measurement range. So the other thing I wanted to explain about the barefoot sandals is pretty much how to put it together. So if you don't have a customer and you just want to make prototypes just so you can put it on the display and then take the measurements and fit it to your customer, this is how I made my measurements. So let me get my ruler here. So what I have here is the loop, and I use size 11 seed beads for the loop, and I used 40 beads. Making barefoot sandals for people, I have noticed that I can go down to 35 beads, or I can go up to maybe 43 or 44 beads, because don't forget, we all don't have the same kind of feet, all right? So even our toes, and you want to remember the toes. So you may want to just, you know, and that's one thing I didn't mention and I forgot, and I apologize, but you might want to just do a little you know, a little circumference thing around the toe just to get an idea. But I find that pretty much 40 is the average, and it works probably about, I'd say 9 out of 10 times. And then you want to make sure you measure this properly, because once you measure this, you're not going to be able to change it, okay? Because when we get down to here, and actually, you know what, before we get up there, I just want to show you. So the length between here and here for an average person is approximately, you know, 3.5, 3 3/4. Sometimes, depending on if the person has a long foot, it may go up into 4 or 4.5 inches. But if they have a little tinier foot, or if you're making barefoot sandals for children, because I had to do that for a wedding, it may actually be even 3 or even 2.5 inches. So you want to make sure that, you know, once you make this, you have, you know, you just want to make sure you take accurate measurements as possible. Up here, average, I think this one is 9 inches. Let's see, I kind of want to stretch this out because I want to include this as part of the circumference of the person's ankle. And I think, let's see, let me move this over here so you can see. Yeah, so if I want to measure from this clasp to this first jump ring, it looks like it's about 8 3/4 inches. Maybe if we really stretched it, 9 inches. And the thing about this is, if you happen to have an intricate design like I have on here, and if you want to, if you're secure and you know that you're going to be adding, like if you're a good beader and you're secure about your knowledge of beads and that you're going to be adding something here, what you may want to do is get an extender. I just did this. I just made an extender from jump rings. I normally wouldn't do this. Well, actually, I would not do this in a customer order because I want to make sure it's as secure as possible. So I would go out and like source out, like, let's say a metal chain extender and add it to here. The other thing you have to remember too, and like I said, this is why I don't think this is really good for a part-time, like a beginning beader. Well, I don't even think this is. Let me get my little bead soup here. So the diameter of 9, so let's say the circumference of your customer's ankle is 9 inches, like what we measured on here. What's going to change is, that's fine and dandy if you're just going to have this, just seed beads, but what you don't realize is this. So I'm just going to go through like my bead soup and stuff here. So let me just grab this string and I'll just move this over here. So we're just going to add this on really quick just so you could see. Adding bigger beads is actually going to change your inside diameter, which is very important because that's what's going to rest up against the customer's leg. So you want to make sure too that you have, well, maybe if I can find some string beads that'll fit on the string or whatever. But anyway, so now, as you can see, where your inside diameter is this string, now it's come in, you've just lost approximately 1/4 inch of your inside diameter, which means that if we were going to take, let's just say another string, now this is your inside diameter. And you can see it's actually going to be a smaller circumference than your customer's leg. So if, depending on the size beads that you put in, you want to make sure you keep that in mind, okay? And like I said, if it's just seed beads, you're fine, you know, that's fine. But whatever beads that you put in, you want to make sure that you account for that inside diameter. And you're going to learn that over time. feet soup. You're going to learn that over time, and basically, really, you'll get proficient as time goes on with it, and you'll practice and do your prototypes and make that. Practice on people, maybe, you know, on relatives or your children, or if you have any, your nieces, nephews, family members, and just, you know, really have some fun with it. A couple other things I wanted to say too was, remember that you can't measure an ankle by somebody's wrist, okay? So I had a customer who had asked me, well, you can just measure my wrist, can't you? And I said, no, actually I can't. And the reason why, and I have a really good example of it right here. If you look at this bracelet, it's pretty loose on me. It's a, you know, I have maybe a 6.5 inch wrist. So this bracelet fits pretty loose, right? And if I take my bracelet off, you can see that my ankle is, well, I can tell you that my ankle is not this size, okay? And I have tree trunks as ankles, and that's pretty much why we were using a foot display instead of my own feet, because I just didn't want to subject you wonderful people to that kind of horror. So I wish my ankles were this small. So that's just that. So you can see, so obviously you can't measure my wrists because it's really not going to work. Even though this is a lot bigger, my ankles are a lot bigger than this. In fact, I think I've got cankles in my old age. So that's just really it. Just remember that you want to make sure that when you measure, you're going to measure where, if this was weighted, you're going to remember, you're going to feel where the beads actually fall onto the base of the foot. I really don't have anything else to say. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, well, what happens if you get an email from a customer saying, oh, well, can you make me barefoot sandals? You know, here are my measurements. So what you want to do is be clear in your email to your customer and tell them that they need to be very, very clear, and that you need to teach them how to properly measure. So these are just basically things I've run across, and I hope this video was pretty helpful to you. I just wanted to say, if you're also trying to figure out, like if the customer emails you and they say, well, I'm approximately, or I think it's, you know, I have like an 8-inch ankle, then what you could say is, are you absolutely sure? And they say, well, I think it's going to fall around here, but I could be this, and it's like this up here. Your best bet is actually to make it shorter. You do the smaller number that they give you, because what you can do is you can always add on an extender. And when I had made one for my customer, this was via email, she had said in her email, I'm like, well, measure around, I said, at the lowest part of the foot where, you know, when you wear an anklet, where it'll fall. And she says, well, it depends if my ankles are swollen or not. Sometimes in the morning, I'm 8 inches, and in the evening, I could be 8.5 or 9, because she had swelling of the legs. And that's the other thing you have to take account too, is people are just all different shapes and sizes. Some of us have leg swellings due to medical conditions. So you want to try and keep things like that in mind. So not that you want to get into the person's medical history, but what you can ask is, do your feet pretty much not swell by the end of the day? Because if the event that they want it for is in the morning or in the evening, that could really have a big effect. And you could just say, well, I just want to know because I know people's legs can swell, you know, from the morning to the evening, and I just wanted to make sure I'm getting your measurements right. So what the other thing you could do with that, with the extender, really helps, you know, in that case. So you may always want to create the barefoot sandal in the measurement that they want, but always add an extension just for that give and just to, you know, accommodate the person. So that's really all I have to say about that. If I haven't mentioned anything and that you have any questions about, feel free to find me on Facebook under Silver Snake Designs, or put in a comment or a message, you know, in the comments in YouTube. I'm really still learning how to do this, and I am not technical at all. So I really hope this video helped you. Like I said, any questions, you contact me anytime, and I will be more than happy to help you get through with your project. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.